Comedy is one of the hardest genres to convey in the tabletop role-playing game space, but some folks just seem to have a knack for it. This week on Schedule for Launch, join me, Zach Walsh, as I talk with Chris Lowry about his various works and the publishing house that he works with. From Tyrannosaurus Dungeons to Assassinating Santa Claus, there are so many wild adventures in store. We talk comedy, publishing, and actual plays. Welcome to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I am incredibly excited to be joined by the wonderful Chris Lowry, or is it pronounced Lowry? I want to make sure I get that right. Lowry, okay. Should have went with my gut. Chris, thank you so much for joining me this week on the podcast.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
There is a lot of stuff that you work on, and you've done a lot of really cool stuff. The very first thing that I saw from you was Tyrannosaur Inside, and I loved that so much. It had like this comedy feel to it. I haven't picked it up and read it yet, but it's definitely on my list of things to do. So I'm very excited to learn about a couple of the other projects that you're working on and some of the really cool things that you're doing.
Well, yes, I'd love to have a chat about Tyrannosaur Inside. Basically, I'm a bit of a one-trick pony, so the style of play I enjoy is the kind of the whole kind of drive it like you stole it sort of vibe of just stupid idiocy. And I really like Morkborg as well. I don't know if you've played that.
I haven't.
But it's sort of a take on the kind of old school revival kind of thing of quite simple, but it then just goes incredibly dark and completely tongue-in-cheek. So it's a very, very simple game, and you just die. Like as in, you can create a character that has one hit point, and there's a character creator called Scumbirther, and if you don't like the character it creates, it's just got a button that just says kill this one, and that's the button to renew and just generate a new character. So Tyrannosaur Inside is a ridiculous adventure where a T-Rex lands in your village or your town, or like you could just set it in anything really. It's very much designed to and then the T-Rex is like the size of a city or multiple stories high or whatever, and then you go in through the toenail, and everything inside is more T-Rexes.
Oh my gosh. So, audience, that's a little sneak peek at some of the stuff you're going to be hearing about here. But Chris, before we really dive into some of your current projects there, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I don't know what to say about me, really. I mean, it seems a bit stupid to be like on a podcast to talk about myself and then be like, oh, I don't know how to talk about myself. I am Chris. I also go by C.M. Lowry. The main reason for that is there is a science fiction author called Chris Lowry currently writing in America doing very similar things to me in the science fiction space. So I thought probably having a different name would be a good idea. So I've a bit like J.R. Tolkien or C.S. Lewis or whoever. I went with C.M. Lowry. I am a doctor. What else am I? I'm just a bit of an idiot. I'm quite into punk rock. And I'm an author. So I started off by writing a novel, and then thought, before send a novel to someone, I maybe need to be a bit more established. So I'll write something else. So I started last year and I wrote The Die Decides, which is sort of RPG adjacent. So it's a book of microfiction, like flash fiction. So stories of 100 to 1,000 words that were decided by rolling a dice. So I'd roll a dice, it would be like 5. So that's 500 words. And then I had like themes and styles. So maybe like, I don't know, dinosaur and cookery, or I don't know, pigeons and horror, or something like that. Whatever the themes and the categories were. And so then I had to write a 500-word story on pigeons and horror, which I imagine, let's write that now. I imagine what would happen is you'd be walking along a road and you'd be like, that pigeon's not following me, is it? Like it's not. And then you'd like walk around the corner, So I walked around the corner in a hurry, and there was another pigeon. In fact, pretty sure it's the same. Is it? I looked back around the corner. That pigeon had gone, and this pigeon was, And basically, I wrote a lot of stories like that were just that were little, but they were very different in style. So I
Yeah.
actually had genre, and sorry, I'm not talking about me at all. I've immediately started talking about a project, but
No, that's okay.
they were so my backers on Kickstarter chose the like the category, so like
Hmm.
science fiction or historical or for some reason those are the only two genres I can think of in the world now. Romance, time travel, who knows? And then that was like the genre, and then the theme was like revenge or badgers or
Hmm.
biscuits or something like that. And so it did just end up with loads of, and like there was some, I think I ended up when we did the live roll to generate stories, I think cookery and betrayal came up like 3 times in 35 stories, which is quite a lot of times. And there's only, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's poisoning, isn't it? Like there's not much more you can do with that. But I found the challenge of writing like 100-word stories really fun. 1,000-word stories, I think the hard area was about 500 words. 100
Hmm.
words, you're just giving a snapshot. You're
Yeah.
just putting a bit of flavour and an event, and that's kind of it. And 1,000 words, you can do a beginning, a middle, and an end, but
Hmm.
400 words, it's too long for it just to be like a piece that just kind of, I looked at the wall and the wall was all dappled. Like you can't just have adjectives for
Yeah.
400 words. Anyway, so I did that, and then I really like role play games. So I think the next thing I did was Tyrannosaur Inside, um, which went fairly well on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And then because I decided to illustrate it myself as well, I can show you one. Obviously, your viewers can't see. Here it is here. But so
I love it.
I illustrated the whole thing, which was my first time doing illustration. So and Morkborg has got a very like a very there's a into the toenail of the beast.
Yeah.
It's got a very horrible style is how you'd probably describe Morkborg. So like so that was interesting working out how to make something look really grotty and horrible. And
Hmm.
then I got a new job working in accident and emergency, like the emergency department. What do you call it in Canada?
The emergency department. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a new
ER.
job there, which turned out to be who would have thought that working in an emergency department was harder than you'd expect? And then I went on holiday and stuff like that, and so I basically just completely failed to hit all of the targets I'd aimed for myself for a good like 2 or 3 months, and so I finally got it finished in October. At the same time as launching, pretty much at the same time as launching another Kickstarter, and the way that printing and posting worked out, they ended up both arriving at the same time, which was
That's incredible.
spectacularly disorganized of me, but that's life sometimes.
It's so interesting too. You have this like really heavy flair for comedy theming in your role playing games. Obviously, those short fictions, the microfictions there, probably a lot of them had a bit of a comedic twist to them, and that just seems like a style you really like. And you don't see a lot of, you do see a lot of comedic writing, but you don't see a whole lot that's like really thought out or fun. And I really like it. Just it's something that brings a lot of flavor to what you're putting out there. And as I discovered today, another one of your Kickstarters that's actually going till Christmas, which is Operation Santa. What's this game? How did it come to be?
Well, so I'll tell you how this one came to be, and it's comedy on its own. On the 11th of December last year, I
Hmm.
decided to do a Kickstarter. And the aim was that I would write and complete a game within that week, get it printed, and get it posted out by Christmas Day, which was obviously way optimistic, way optimistic. But then I
Yeah.
wrote a Kickstarter page for it that basically said, look, this isn't going to happen and you're just going to be miserable and cry all day on Christmas. And I like loads of things like that the whole way through, and just like
Hmm.
and then your Christmas will be ruined and you might as well just throw the turkey in the bin or whatever. And basically Kickstarter were like, well, like you absolutely 100% categorically are not going to be allowed to release this game. Like when your like delivery time frame is like December the 25th, ha ha, only joking, not really, maybe December the 25th, 2050. Like as in, and so by that point, I just realised that it wasn't going to happen because it took them like three
Hmm.
days to say please stop being non-serious with your like, because I think when you're writing your Kickstarter campaign, it says like, what are the risks of this? Like, and it has like, what are the risks and challenges? And I think like one of the things I put in risks and challenges was like, a meteor might hit the Earth and we'll all die, and Christmas will be cancelled. At which point you probably won't want a Christmas RPG. And like they didn't feel I was approaching it with the level of sincerity and seriousness that one obviously needs for a stupid Christmas RPG. So I didn't do it last year, but this year I thought, yeah, I'll do it, and I made it all a little bit more serious. Not more serious.
Mhm.
The page. I don't
The page is
outright
up.
promise to disappoint people. I got rid of one of the pledges as well. One of the pledge levels was, so I now have a pledge level for £50 of I hate everything about Christmas, where you get a copy of everything I've printed this year. But I did have another pledge. Was like please don't get this pledge. And it was £100, and you got a copy of the game and a copy of a really cheap, bad Santa suit. And then like my description of it was like, please don't buy this. You don't want this Santa suit. I promise you, I'll buy a bad one that's really cheap. You don't need this. Please don't buy it. And that was like anyway. So I got rid of that one because I thought I need to look a little bit more like a businessman or something. So Operation Santa. It's spelled S.A.N.T.A, like, which is an acronym. I think that's an
Hmm.
acronym, not an
Yep.
abbreviation. So it's like Operation Santa, all in capital letters. And then that stands for the strategic annihilation of a nefarious tentacled alien. And the whole thing is really a thought experiment of like what would happen if what would the worst possible replacement for Father Christmas be? And the
Okay.
answer I decided was some kind of horrible, malicious alien, utterly defiling any hint of positivity within the traditional Yuletide stories. And I wrote an intro. Where is it? Can I read the intro out?
Of course. Oh yeah, go for it.
Welcome to the North Pole. Cast away your pathetic, childish fantasies. This is no winter wonderland. There are no toys here, no candy, no songs about tinsel and joy. This is a harsh, bleak wasteland of chemical spills, brutal indentured servitude, and utterly absent hope. This is a land where the bells don't jingle, they toll. And so yeah, it's a bit horrible. There's quite a significant like content warning because like there's loads of
Yep.
just horrible stuff in it and like non-consensual surgery. So broadly, like the elves are actually some
Hmm.
like it's a tough one, and I've actually got a Greenlandic sensitivity reader for the project, just because I don't want to tread on any toes in terms of because like Greenland's history is actually pretty horrible. Like basically Denmark sort of still owns Greenland, and Denmark is not the nearest country to Greenland.
Yep.
And so Denmark just sort of claimed it, and then I think they did loads of really horrible like camps where they re-educated people and sent people like, and
Mm.
then loads of people died from smallpox, and the whole island's named after colonial settlers, and it's just a
Yeah.
mess. I've mostly avoided that by just setting the whole thing in an uninhabited corner of the country, and then just made it absolutely nonsense with no kind of link to the actual culture of the place. But some Danish soldiers from 1700 were sort of kidnapped by the alien and then injected with loads of nuclear waste or something, and so they've got tentacles and things, and then for some reason they just get bits chopped off them and new bits glued on and stuff like that. And then there's anarchistic penguins as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
so the sensitivity reader, Malik Hansen, one of the first things they pointed out to me, he said, you do know there are no penguins in Greenland, right? And I think the first line of the section about penguins says, I'm trying to think where it is now. It says something along the lines of, aha, penguins are only found at the South Pole. Nope. At some point, the alien transported them there or something. So, that could have been a loose end thematically, but I very clearly tied that up so beautifully that no one could have any problems. But yeah, the penguins, like, they use tools and they put up subversive posters and they destroy patriarchy. Is apparently their storyline. So
Hmm.
it's a stupid game. You shouldn't buy it.
Audience, get this game. It's got it. It's less than £100 to to get this thing up and going. Well, I think it's just over 100 quid.
Yeah,
It's 162 Canadian.
Oh yeah, it's yeah. We're nearly funded. I'm fairly confident we'll raise the other £9 in the
100%.
remaining 28 days. But it depends if anyone actually reads it. Like, yeah, they might be disappointed. I'm trying to think. Have I got any cool tables? Okay, so let me give you a little taste of this. So we're going to work out why you're playing this game. Okay, you need a D6. Do you have a D6, or can you, in your head, think up a number between 1 and 6? I know that's hard. Like.
I have a D6.
Do it, okay? So you work for
3.
You work for the UN Environmental Agency or Greenpeace. You can choose.
Okay.
And then roll again.
1.
You are a postal worker, which is very thematic with the whole Santa vibe. Okay. 1 to 6.
4.
You came for medical tourism. Okay.
Okay.
So that's an interesting one. And then why don't you want to be here?
3.
Laziness. So you'd rather just be at home. But so we now need a reason. So it's quite bare bones. And the idea is that a lot of you chat together and you throw out any ideas that don't really work. And you know, so like medical tourism is that thing where like it's too expensive to have surgery done in the country you're in, so you go there or whatever. Yeah. So you can leave it in if you want, or you can change it. But you know, I think laziness is you've got some kind of severe, like, deteriorating gangrene or something, and you need a new hand, and you've heard that Santa's got some kind of limb removing device, or you couldn't be bothered to Google it. You're a very lazy person, you know. So
yeah.
So you just thought, someone said,
Easier
we're going to go and take out Santa. Do you want to do that? And you're like, I mean, as long as I don't have to do much, fine. That's the level of dedication I'm looking for from my players. Like, as in that level of nonsense, basically. So yeah, that's the game. Have I won you over? I think it might replace Dungeons and Dragons.
Speaking of D&D, I know that this is setting agnostic, but I think it says that it uses the Morkborg stats, right, to make sure that it runs.
Yeah, so like the various types of penguins have got some basic stats. I'm sure that if you're wanting to play it in D&D, you can jump in the monster manual and find some. The general setting itself will just work, and you'll just have to use, if you find yourself falling in a pool of nuclear waste. I don't know whether or not D&D has nuclear waste stats, but I'm sure you can work out, you lose a hit point every day, or you grow a new leg or something like that. I'm sure it'll be fine. I basically allowed the GM to worry about that quite heavily, rather than me having to worry about it. But the idea is there's a framework there, and then if someone wanted to prep, they could do. Tyrannosaur Inside came with full D&D, full Morkborg stats, and then there's two versions. So there's that, and then there's a version that's got full D&D stats. I think it's a mark of significant criticism of D&D that the D&D version had to be 8 pages longer. It's only about 22 pages, I think, and it had to be 8 pages longer to fit all of the D&D stats in. But
is that because the T-Rex stats are actually kind of nuts in D&D?
Yeah, the other thing I did, which you can't. So if you use anything from the open game license, you have to include the whole license. You've probably seen that in the back of
I've seen it a bunch of times.
Like supplements. So I was quite annoyed by that, because it's not very pretty, and I'd worked very hard to make the whole thing very pretty. So I managed to make it incredibly small font, and then I don't know if you can see there, I then laid it out in the shape of T-Rexes. So there's just a big silhouette of T-Rexes, and like if you wanted to, you could read the license, but it's very much. I think a lot of people won't even realise the license is printed in there. So I enjoyed that. I felt very satisfied. I was like, this actually looks good now, and I've fulfilled the requirements of the OGL. Whereas Morkborg has a very permissive license. So this here is a zombie from the game. It's a poop zombie. So that's got the entire Morkborg license printed on it as well, and stats, and is a badge that you can wear. It's probably the world's first Morkborg monster on a badge for some reason. Because of course we need these things.
I have learned a lot about your personality so far doing this. I've never seen anybody. It's hilarious. I've never heard of anybody antagonizing Kickstarter for
I didn't.
Christmas.
What? Yeah, you're right. That was a bad idea, wasn't it? Like, I mean, and then I've been saying how. So I was hoping I'd make about 100 quid a day on the campaign, and so far it's bounced up to 100 quid, and then just done literally nothing for 2 days. So
Yeah.
oh well. Kickstarter, if you're listening to this, I respect you. I love you. I will never talk flippantly about the likelihood of getting hit by a meteor during fulfillment of a campaign ever again. So yeah, good. That should have fixed that. Now let's see the numbers
Yep.
tick up.
There's actually another project that is pretty much also funded, or it's already funded from like yesterday evening when I looked at it. Lucky for None. Can you tell us a little bit about that game and how
I
exactly
can
that works?
indeed.
I love the concept of Lucky for None.
So Lucky for None. I mean, I think unfortunately I'm painting myself into somewhat of a corner here when I tell you that it's a very stupid game, and but also one that's a sort of comedy horror game. So
Yeah.
it really started with I bought a D13 dice, so a 13-sided dice, and because it's not got
Yeah.
an even number of sides, they roll weird. I hadn't expected it to roll like, and it'll like spider across the table, and just when you think it stopped, it'll turn, and then it'll do like another like couple of inches and then stop. And so I found that weird and sort of spooky, and then just sort of fun, basically. And so I wrote a
Mm-hmm.
game. I actually did a retreat to the mountains with some friends through
Okay.
beyond Cataclysm, which we'll talk about in a bit. But we went up to the mountains, and while I was waiting at a train station, I wrote some D13 tables, and yeah. So basically the aim of the game is you're visiting the town of Grimhaven, sorry, and whatever you do, everything's going to get horribly worse. Everyone's going to die. You're going to die. The world might blow up. That's sort of, that standard kind of comfortable setting. And
Mm-hmm.
what happens is if you want to do anything, there's an action table, and it's a 1 to
Okay.
13. So I think it's something like 1 and a 2. Whatever you try and do goes horrifically badly.
Mm-hmm.
And we come back from that edit. You very professionally made it look like I didn't stop and hunt around my office for ages and give up. Let me tell you a bit more about Lucky for None. So we're actually going to play this. So you're going to roll a D13, which you don't have. So just, I don't know, have you got, any
got a
D20
computer.
and then, there you go. You have got a computer. So roll a D13 and we're going to find out what your character is.
Okay. 1.
1, you are a labourer. Okay, so you're like a builder.
Okay.
You're good at building. That's
Yeah.
your skill. Okay, village problem. Let's have a D13 twice again.
7 and 3.
So we've got metalwork and blood. Okay, so people's blood is turning. So this is, as a group, you then discuss, or if you're journaling it, you just kind of make it up on your own. But let's say that everyone's blood is turning to like molten iron, and then they're catching fire because obviously they're full of molten iron, which sounds bad. So
Yeah.
you've had a WhatsApp and you've been summoned to the somewhere in the town. Roll a D13 again.
3 again.
3. We're meeting at the police station. There we go. So you've been summoned there by the police because people keep spontaneously catching fire, which is fair enough that we probably need to have some kind of chat about this. And so what happens is the whole game is you do actions, and you've got the action table which rolls on it's a 1 to 13, and the higher you score, the better you do. But if you hit 13, then you roll on the bad things table. And you can do stuff like you can use your building skill to help you, or you can use you've got a couple of luck points as well, and they boost your score up, but that means they also boost your score towards 13, and then horrible, crazy things happen. So you're at the police station, and a police officer says, "Sorry, have you been invited to this meeting? You can't come in." And so they closed the door. What do you do?
If I need to get into that meeting, I guess I'm breaking into this meeting. So using my laboring skills, I'll pop open another door.
Brilliant. Okay, so you're gonna try and kind of like just hammer. I mean, there's a spade leaning against the wall. Do you want to just try and smash a wall
just
with a
smash
spade?
the door and smash
Brilliant.
the wall.
So let's have a 13.
Well, that's a 13. So
That's a 13. Brilliant. Okay, so it's an absolute success, But so you get an absolute success, but we also roll on the bad things table, so that's lovely. So I think you just like you get, because you're a labourer, particularly skilled. So you whack the door once, just in like, it's actually really quite precise. Like you think someone's just hammering a door with a spade. That doesn't sound like precise work,
No.
but you are an expert of your craft, and so you hit it, and the whole thing just crumples, falls off its hinge, and the door is just open. You actually you look around and give a little self-satisfied smile, but no one noticed, so that's just for you. Okay, let's roll you roll d13 3 times.
Okay, so that's 10, a 1, and another 10.
Okay. Okay, so what you've rolled there is fever. Okay, so like fever is going to affect you in some way, and who it affects a part of you. Okay, so it only affects a bit of your body, not the whole body,
Okay.
and it causes an ironic death.
Oh.
So which is a shame. I think what would be quite ironic here is if, in the purpose of trying to, break in and find out like what's going on, what's happening here, you really want to avoid getting, succumbing to the same fate as everybody else in the town. I feel like
Yeah,
the fever, the small part of you that's affected, is your bloodstream.
probably.
So I
Yeah.
feel I feel like the kind of the hot. So how do you feel now as your blood starts to turn into molten iron?
Probably really bad. I'm going to say I feel really bad.
Yeah, you feel rough. So you're probably going to die in the next couple of, like, maybe the next scene. Like, as in, we'll work
Yeah.
that out. But so that gives you a taste of the game. It's extremely stupid. I've had games of people using those little motability scooters to try and jump a chasm of fire. I've had people try and drink an entire lake full of whiskey. Like lots and lots of extremely stupid things. And it's one where, just like, so if your character died, well, then you would just now be the policeman that you saw before, or whatever like that.
Yeah.
It's and a horrible event happens every 13 minutes as well, which is obviously exciting.
Oh, that's
Um,
fun.
it's definitely not a game that people will be like, oh yes, what are you doing? Oh, I'm working through the 8th episode of my campaign in Lucky for None.
Yeah.
But it is a game that you can play in a pub with no brain attached whatsoever.
Yeah.
So and we had a few different people do some, what those things that when you make lots of money and then you throw it away on nonsense, with pledges on Kickstarter, like stretch goals. That's the one. Yeah, so I funded some people to write some extra tables. So there's an alternate problem table, which one of the things I'm quite a fan of there is, so you roll twice to see what other village problem you can have.
Mhm.
If you roll 13 twice, the subject and the effect are goblins and goblins. So your town is affected by double goblins. So yeah, pretty fun.
That's
Anyway, that's
incredible.
the game. It's you can buy it at beyondcataclysm.co.uk.
Well, folks, you heard it here. From what I'm aware, the very first actual play of Lucky for None.
I think
But
yeah, I
you had
think
just,
it is.
yeah, that'd probably be it. As far as I'm aware, though, you just brought up Beyond Cataclysm Books. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what you're doing with that? Because I think that's actually really cool and probably the most important overarching thing.
Oh yeah, you think I should focus on like things that are useful and relevant and like stuff that's
Maybe.
good business? Yeah, that's a good idea. You should come on board as a businessman. Beyond Cataclysm Books is a micro publisher and distro. So we do small print run publishing things of things, mostly printed things, and we also do distro as well. So if you go on our site and go to, so Beyond Cataclysm, obviously we chose a word that's hard to spell so that you can't spell it and then can't find our site. Yeah, you see, business. Beyondcataclysm.co.uk, and go to the shop. We've got about 100 different roleplay games. We've got some comics on there, poetry. We brought out a few different books. So we've now brought out, I think we brought 2 games out, two novels, and a book about tour stories from the punk scene in the UK as well,
Yeah,
called Paper Cuts.
I really like it. There's like a lot of really cool stuff there. Um, there's releases that's coming up. There's like your shop. And the idea of like a micro publisher too is just so, like, we hear about them and stuff, but I think that yours is doing really well here. I really like the look of it and everything's laid out. There's a lot of fun stuff here. Like I think Acid Death Fantasy
Yeah.
is there. That game was all over the place on my feeds for a while. And
Yep.
I was really into the look of that. So just having that available and being a micro publisher, you get a little bit, you can be a little bit more niche and a little bit broad at the same time. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately we're never going to be like, I think we could go up to like something that had the kind of popularity that would make like 10,000, 20,000, pounds, dollars, something
Yeah.
like that. That would be amazing. Beyond that, you start getting into different realms of tax and printing
Yeah.
and distribution and stuff like that. And so that's fine. That can be someone else's problem. And if you've got a project that's that successful, then fantastic. That's
Hmm.
you want that to be handled by someone with some kind of business mind rather than just a moron like me. But yeah, but it isn't just me. So there's actually, I mean, at the moment working kind of semi full time. We've got myself and we've got Dave. So Dave Emerson runs a kind of a zine publisher called Visions Press, and loads of
Okay.
horrible, horrible hardcore bands that he's in as well. He'd be very happy to bore you about some boring hardcore. We've also got Josh, who helps us out on stalls, and Catherine, my lovely wife, who is very good at putting things in envelopes without getting them wrong, which I'm not good at. So it's a good combination of skills there. We do have two podcasts as well, which
Yes. Yes, you
I
do.
suspect listeners of your podcast like podcasts because you're listening to a podcast. See, um,
I think I've actually heard about at least one of these ones because there is what is role play, I think is the one that I'm more familiar with.
yeah. I mean, this book I read has only got one episode released, which
Well,
is
that's
because
fair.
I'm an idiot. I've recorded more than one, but I've only got around to releasing one because I'm an idiot. Um, but what is roleplay? We've got about 7 of those going, ready to go. Obviously, we've got 4 released at the moment. What it is, it's a look at roleplay to people who haven't played roleplay before,
Hmm.
or people who just want a bit of a fresh look at it. So we're going through themes. So the first one is the basics, and we look at dice and just the concept of roleplay in general. And it's aimed at people who've never played D&D, never played anything like anything, like
Yeah.
zero idea whatsoever of what you're talking about when you say a roleplay game. And I only got into roleplay about like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but I had no prior experience and it was incredibly daunting.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who, as you can see, is quite creative and quite happy to, you know, do
Yeah.
theatre of the mind. But the idea of what it meant to have like no framework at all, or it felt like no framework. So we do that, and then we go as we're going for each one. So I think we've got death and we've got life. So like in the death episode, we explore a few different systems and how they deal with death, and then we talk a little bit about the concept of death, and then each episode ends with an actual play. Not like massively about the concept of death. That could be more than like a
Yeah.
40-minute
That's
episode. Uh, but as in like what why death is useful or interest. So, for example, in the brief thing we just played of Lucky for None, it's comedically interesting that your character died after its first very action, and it died ironically from the very thing it was trying
exactly.
to escape dying. Like if the stakes hadn't been as high and you just got a sore finger, it wouldn't be as funny.
No.
And so yeah, so we discussed those kind of ideas. So the next one's life. I can't remember what else is next. But we love that. We think it's quite a fun listen. So yeah, what is role play?
Surviving something.
Oh, and then we've got 2 episodes about surviving a games con as well. Just as like if you're going and you want to kind of explore role play games, some ideas of how to do that. So
I like it. I like it a lot. I like the idea behind it. There is a lot going on with it. There is a lot of open doors that you've kind of set up with it. How did the group of you get into starting oh my
beyond
gosh,
Cataclysm.
Beyond
No, that's fun.
Cataclysm? Wow.
That's fine. I mean, I think you've really highlighted quite clearly the fact that it's probably a bad name, and I agree. But it actually comes from, I think we've got a quote somewhere. Let's have a look. About FAQ, I think. It comes from a quote from The Day of the Triffids, which is a classic
Oh, I
sci-fi
know Day
book.
of the Triffids. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a quote from it that goes like this, and I just think it fit. I'm a big John Wyndham fan.
Okay.
In this book I read, I talk about Day of the Triffids. It's the first episode. But what I really like this quote, and I like it because it makes a nod to the current climate crisis and just humanity being
Hmm.
disappointing. It must be, I thought, one of the race's most persistent and comforting hallucinations to trust that it can't happen here, that one's own time and place is beyond cataclysm. And we thought it's a good title for something that's got sci-fi vibes to it, just
Yeah.
generally something fictiony, So we started that, and it's because there were a few of us. So myself and Sarah, who started it with us, she's not really involved at the moment. She's moved into doing music production and things like that a bit. But
Yeah.
she was releasing a book about punk for the UK punk scene. I was working on some other work, and it seemed to make sense, and it's
Hmm.
kind of continued from there, really. If you have a book that you've written, absolutely send us an email, or if you're interested in we're a bit like you mentioned your roots a bit in the indie music scene.
Yeah. So, listeners, it's been a long time since I've had a musician on, but the idea for Schedule for Launch was originally to start highlighting a lot of indie indie artists in the music scene because I was talking to a lot of those people. I grew up around music, and that that didn't happen. I got adopted by the tabletop role playing game community. That's why most of the episodes are surrounding them instead of music and stuff. But I think I got like 2 or 3 episodes with musicians and a couple authors.
But
But
it,
yeah,
it but
so
but what you see a lot in the indie music scene is you see you see bands producing an album themselves and then teaming up with a
yep.
label on quite a kind of a low level. So maybe the print costs are shared, or the label only commits to actually having like 50 of them, and the artist takes 100 or something like that. And
Hmm.
that's the kind of vibe we go with. So we just the most recent book that we brought out was Electrodermal by John Davidson, and so he'd written a novel, and I kind of gave some tips on it and helped him kind of get it printed. It comes with some awesome postcards from a South American artist called Law Tissot, I think Tisset. But yeah, so John did a Kickstarter, got that printed, and then we took some copies, and he's got some copies, and it's a partnership rather than you're not signing up with a major label and having everything taken care of, but
Yeah.
we like helping cool people make cool things.
Hmm. Inspirials is with you guys too, isn't it?
We've got it in the shop, but
Yeah.
we didn't publish that. I think
Okay.
they're sort of self published as a similar thing. They had an idea that was successful, and so they had 20 grand to print it. They're really lovely guys. I got chatting to them at a GameCon recently. I think they're putting together another expansion book for
Yeah. Yeah.
Inspiriles, which I was
Overisles.
totally. I think I gave them a copy of my last book and was like, please just let me write something. You don't have to pay me anything. So we'll
Yeah,
see if that
we
goes.
had Rich on the podcast like a year ago. Actually, I think it was right as Inspirials was going into Kickstarter. So it's been a little bit, but yeah, that one was really exciting. But it's like that's the kind of demographic that you're helping push out in the shops and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we're probably not a distro on that quite on that level with shops.
No.
We are working on our relationship with. It's just those things. The problem is we just don't sell at the quantities
Yeah.
that necessarily make sense for that. So we mostly sell online, and then we've got a web store, and then we sell at conventions as well. What we will look into, and we're kind of in the pipeline on, is stuff that we print, getting
Hmm.
that into the shops. And so if people come with us and they say, actually, we'd like you to be our one of the things that's really challenging is that that postage is so expensive from America.
Yes.
Or from Canada,
Yeah.
or from, I mean, I think Japan's for some reason the most expensive, but
Super
and
high. Yeah.
because it's so expensive, and because actually printing is not that expensive, it can actually be more effective to do a small scale print run in the UK of like 50 rather than posting 50 over.
Hmm.
So if any TTRPG writers or creators are thinking, well, I'd like there to be some copies in England, but I only need 10 over there and it's going to cost me 50 quid to post it. Drop us an email. We might be able to print it for a quid a copy and give you a couple of quid, and then we can sell it, and then you're present over here. And anyway, but also it's
Yeah.
more environmentally friendly doing that.
Yes,
That's
it
our other
is.
vibe with it.
Yeah, and it's not like you guys are setting out to be the next Waterstones or anything like that.
I
You're
think
printing books
Waterstones
for
has a
you.
name that you can spell and remember, which is helpful. Um,
Chris, we've been going for almost 50 minutes now. So I got two more questions for you just to start wrapping this up. And I ask these on the end of every episode. But the first one is, what advice can you give to creators who want to make their own game, but they don't really know where to start?
well, it is a tough one. I mean, I think TTRPG, more than anything else, sort of likes you to have all of the skills under your belt. So,
Hmm.
like graphic design and layout and writing and editing and promotion. I would say I would aim small. I would aim to produce some. Don't aim to produce a big old hardback book, because also no one's going to read it and play it either. You know, Lucky for
Yeah.
Nuns, 12 pages or something, and someone might pick that up and play that. Probably they won't. Probably they'll just throw it in the bin, and that would be the wise decision. But yeah, so I'd aim small. I'd go and get some free art off the internet from like public domain kind of websites.
Yeah.
And I would go with a simple kind of bold approach. Choose a nice typeface. Typefaces are cool. Fonts are fun. But like, you know, something like that that stands out, and then just have that on its own. And then I
Hmm.
would dump it on Kickstarter or on Itch, and I would absolutely have the mentality, if this makes £5, brilliant. I mean, what I would say, you need to make more than £5, because I did set the initial aim for the Kickstarter for Operation Santa to be an aim of it needed £1 to fund, with
Oh,
the idea that then if it made, so if it was at £1 now, it's at £91. Okay, so it would be at 910% already, like or more than that. No, I think it'd have been at 9,000%. I don't know,
yep.
whatever.
Something like
But
that.
yeah, exactly. But set it really low, and then you know, and then a year from now, if you're making 500 quid or £1,000 each time you do one, fantastic. Then you can be like, okay, I need to spend some more money on. But if I look at Lucky for None, I did that entirely in house. I didn't get anyone to help. I didn't get
Mhm.
any help on the art or anything like that. And whereas Tyrannosaur Inside, I probably didn't really make a profit, because I had someone to help me do the D&D tables, and then I paid for some contributors and paid for an editor.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was, I don't regret that. I think I've made a really cool. It's a better game than Lucky for None. It's a proper project,
It's super
but
fun.
yeah, but yeah, if you're aiming to, don't aim to make money. Really, is what I would say. I would say if you set out with the aim, there's a to get all theological. There's a theologian called Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who said this thing about community, and he said, if you set out to make community, your community will fail. If you set out to love your neighbour, your community will succeed. And in the same way, if you set out to make money, I just think you're like, you're just not going to make money, and you're not going to have fun. If you set out to make something silly that, or it doesn't have to be silly. Maybe it's possible to make a role play game that isn't silly, but I've not
Hmm.
encountered that yet. But if you set out to just make something that is good, that you like, and doesn't have to be amazing, but it's just something you can go, oh, that's nice, then your aim of doing that will probably succeed. And then if it makes some money down the road, fantastic. But yeah, I just think if you're trying to make a career in this, I'm moderately successful in some small way, and I have no confidence that I'll be able to make a career out of this. And I'm running a publishing thing and a distro, and still, it's probably just a pipe dream, and that's fine. I think one needs to have a bit of realism sometimes.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's great advice too. A lot of creators have come on in the past and said, like, don't worry about trying to make your fantasy heartbreak. More or less, just like get something out there and get practicing. And I think that definitely falls into the same realm. Chris, where can people find out more about you, Operation Santa, Lucky for None, Tyrannosaur Inside, all that great stuff that you're doing?
So Beyond Cataclysm, you can find at beyondcataclysm.co.uk. And it's on every social media. Well, it's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as at
Yeah.
Beyond Cataclysm. And I am at CM Lowry Author on all of those platforms as well. Obviously, with the dumpster fire that is Twitter, people are going to other places. I haven't joined them yet because life's too short. Yes, you can find me on all of those places. I love getting messages. I love getting emails. Operation Santa. If you're going to do one thing, obviously, will throw money at me because I quite like money. It's good for you can burn it to stay warm. But if you go to Kickstarter and type in Operation Santa, it might come up, even though I spelt it in a weird way to be annoying. You can also jump on my Twitter at CM Lowry Author or at Beyond Cataclysm, and I'm fairly confident it will be the link on there. It's not the link on there now, which it should be, because that would be good promotion. But it will be by the time this gets published, probably.
As always, audience, those links are going to be down in the description below. So you don't even need to go to those Twitter faces and that stuff. You can go and back it right from the description or go and follow Chris at that link there. Chris, I just want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me again. This has been hilarious. I've had a great time learning about your work and playing a game with you. I didn't expect that today, but that was fun.
I would like to leave you all with a Christmas present. Obviously, your Christmas present to me is going to be backing Operation Santa at the 50 quid level. So, much appreciated. My present to all of you is me and my kids wrote a very stupid Christmas EP a couple of years ago, which feel free to listen to on Bandcamp. I imagine the link will be there. It has a song about Grandma. It has a song about Grandma getting run over by a reindeer. When we did it, my 4-year-old didn't really understand that we weren't actually singing about Grandma, and so at the end of it, there's this really cute. There's this really cute bit where it's like, "Is Grandma okay?" And like my wife's like, "Yeah, she's fine."
So that'll be in the link down in the description below. Audience, thank you so much for listening. Chris, once again, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for the invite, and yes, thank you to everyone for listening. And support your little podcast, like share. The thing is, like throwing money at them or whatever would be helpful. Have you got a Patreon?
I don't right now. I'm trying to set
so
up
you can't even throw money. All you can do, is jump on every social media platform, spend 2 minutes and just say, I listened to this cool episode. Take the effort to chuck in the social media tags and just say, go on, people, listen. Like, it's very appreciated by little indie creators. Absolutely.
It's absolutely true. Chris and Operation Santa plus more project are scheduled to launch very soon. Go support them on Kickstarter. Until next time, though, take care of yourselves. Have another wonderful night, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much to Chris for joining me on the show this week. Operation Santa is currently fully funded, but if you want this over-the-top holiday game for yourself, you should go and back it right now. I know Chris said not to, but screw what he thinks. Support this ridiculous game, even if it's just to spite him. Check out that link in the description below. And thank you for listening, audience. As you may be able to hear, I'm once again getting sick, but that's fine, because we have some more projects coming down the woodwork, and I'm really excited to share them with you. With the holidays coming up, there may be a lack of episodes because holidays, but I'm working on it. I'm going to make sure that I'm a little bit more organized for next year. So please be patient, and we're going to get some really cool stuff out there in the near future, especially with Zine Quest coming up once again. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, please share us with a friend, or just use that word of mouth. It's the only way we grow around here. I'm also going to be showing up on a couple of other places around the internet in the near future, but I don't have all the details for that yet. I'll let you know when I find out more, though. That's all from me. Take care of yourselves. I'll chat with you real soon. Bye.